Welcome back. It's the Jeremy Mills podcast. And today we have a very special guest. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Chris Hansen. What's up, man?
Yeah, I'm not the Chris Hansen that most people, when they meet me, are you that Chris Hansen? I don't know which one you think I am. You think I'm the one that does To Catch a Predator? No, that's not me.
Yeah.
You think the guy I'm going to save the Sonics? As much as I would love to be that guy, I'm not that guy.
Yeah, the rich one, the TV one, none of those guys.
I'm the women's basketball guy.
Yeah,
I'm
but
passionate about hoop, but I try to have my impact too.
I was going to say, and from, you don't even have to say it, the people I met said it for you. I saw your camp, obviously we'll get into that, but there was some serious respect from, your Kelly Sopaks to your Kiana Williams to your random parent in California that just knows Chris Hansen and knows the impact he has on basketball and getting girls where they need to be in college and
just being good to people, right? I have a service. I'm serving them for their goals and their things. I just feel like if you make it about you, it's going to be a problem eventually because you're not going to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. And you had that same just comfortableness with your camps that I saw with Alvin Snow. Just you're the head of the camp, you're the guy, yes, but it's not necessarily about you. You're a huge part of it, yes, but you have Mark Wilkerson out there working, you have Ashley out there working, you have, a lot of these amazing trainers.
They're so good at what they do. Like, why would I've trained before, I've run camps, I've been a high school coach, a club coach, I've worked out with players that are now in the pros. Like, I've done that stuff. I respect how they do what they do so much that it's not like, again, it's not about me. I have other things I can contribute to the space, like getting all of those people in one room, like in one gym in one weekend, willing to sacrifice at the same time to do all of those things. And I mean, I've transitioned who my staff has been as I tried to figure out how to do. When I worked at ESPN, we weren't allowed to do events. They have a separate wing of people that just do events. And so when I got the freedom, when I started my own thing to do that, it's a little bit of trial and error. And I had some players that respected me for what I did in the evaluation space say, hey, call this person. The first person they had me call was Chris Hippa. And Kelsey Plum's like, yo, you got to do this. And Heather Corral said, man, if you're going to do that, bring in Ashley. And so I started just with Chris. And if you ever get a chance to talk to him, you got to ask him about, you came to our NorCal camp, our very first camp in Minnesota. He was like the main trainer. Now I have a training staff, right? It was our platform was very, very different. It was evaluation minded, but man, he had to work his tail off. But he was the one that introduced me to Arvin Mosley. Arvin came down and he volunteered the NorCal camp, the one you went to, the very first year we did it. He volunteered just to be a part of it on Chris's recommendation. And then I bring Ashley in the fold, and then I bring Mark in the fold, and now they're indispensable to me. They're as much a part of my elitism brand as I am. I feel like their reputation speaks for itself as well. And why would I mess with that? Mm-hmm. To your point, like it's not about me. It's about providing this product that people want, and they have a great experience because those guys really care about teaching the game, which is why they keep getting hired. Their first call, anything I do, first call.
Wow. And yeah, you're a manager, and I can see that. Like you say, bring all these people in the room, but also put them in the right positions. Mark starting out the camp, getting those kids hyped up, bringing the energy. That's just smart.
So I ask, a lot of these elite kids go to a lot of camps. It's part of the new hustle, I'll say. Years and years ago, before I started in this, camp was a thing. You had the ABCD camp, you had the Adidas camp, you had the Nike camp, before club basketball kind of took over and became a team event again. So, but this group of kids, especially the top 25 kids, they grow up going to these camps to make sure they have people like Mai's attention. There's not just me in the space, there's plenty of people, but they want to make sure that they're doing the work and it's being validated in some way. So they come compete in these platforms where sometimes people like me don't run the event, but they're present. And so I picked their brain. I'm like, you go to all these things, like, why do you come back to us? What's different? And, you guys they all hire pretty good basketball people. They all provide some level of quote unquote exposure. Why are you here? Why are you flying from Dallas, Texas to Seattle, Washington, to be a part of this? And right off the jump, it's just the energy is different here. And a lot of that has to do, nobody spends the amount of time, it's as simple as it sounds, warming the kids up with, like, we're competing in warm-ups. We're we're doing drills where the kids have to compete as they get their bodies ready to play basketball. And Mark and Ashley have been instrumental in putting that kind of stuff in. I don't have that type of training that they have, and let alone like their energy and love for the simple task, right? When we look at basketball teams, we got basketball in the background right now. Who wants to go get a rebound? Who wants to go set a screen? Well, the warm up isn't the sexy thing to teach at camp. It's not the ball handling or the finishing. You're not going to see a Euro or a Rondo or any of these other fun names, but literally it's a separator in what we do, and they're that good at it and they take it seriously. Like they really love that piece of it. So who am I to like, man, if the kids are giving me that feedback, it has to continue to be what we do and who we're about. We're an energy group.
Yeah. Well, shout out to all those guys. The Elite is Earn Camp. If the people who didn't listen to that episode, shame on you. It's a great episode. But it's women's basketball camp, girls from ages, man, I feel like I saw.
Middle school, yeah. We try not to go too young in terms of overselling the exposure piece, because I mean, I've been around long enough now, 15 years in this space. Someone can tell you you're number one in 6th, 7th grade. That means absolutely nothing. That's usually not the number one kid at the end. Maya Moore, as an 8th grader, was not the number one kid in the country. She became that through work and a lot of other things. So, but I mean, we still want them in the gym getting the type of training and seeing that level of kids. So as many times as possible, we have both of those camps going together. Now, like a Seattle, the camp has become so big that we have to separate the middle school session from the high school session. But at the same time, Cameron Brink, who's played USA basketball, going to Stanford, top 5 kid on everybody's list in the country. Haley Van Lith, we have her the number 2 kid in the country. She's no lower than 5 on anybody's list as well. Paige Buchers, who's going to UConn out of Minnesota. Those kids all came as middle schoolers, played in the underclass group and didn't complain about it. They're not, oh, my daughter's got to play up. So I feel like even though those situations where we have to separate them, the level of competition and the mindset that's been there has been great, which is why we continue to do it. If it was if it wasn't getting the job done, we probably wouldn't be doing it anymore. Yeah. So that's kind of like, that's the fun in what I do, is we get these kids that are super competitive and we just give them a weekend of Sedona Prince at Oregon. Her mom, Tambra, is a big proponent of what we did, because her daughter went to all these camps that did all these things. And the thing she pointed out to me that I hammer home with my staff every time we do a pre-camp meeting is we keep it competitive, but it's positive. These kids aren't trying to take each other out or anything like that. They're grateful to be in the gym with other great players. And I think you have to make sure that you're putting that first and foremost. And, that's what we try to do. Yeah.
It's camaraderie. It's all the little things that add up to the big things along with the skill. Because if you have Ashley or even Kevin out there teaching you, it's like, woo, these are incredibly skilled trainers.
They know what they're doing. Yeah.
But it's also, they know the building blocks, we could say, of basketball, like you're saying, hustling and competing during warmups, the little things, building it up to be the big things.
I mean, even Mark, you talked to him about his experiences and having a shot to play at a certain level and then, going a different direction. Kevin was a college player. Ashley was a superstar. She was like maybe one of the first superstars out of the state of Washington in the online media era, if you will. She got to play USA basketball and do all these things. And Coach Mosley, having coached college basketball, I just think you look at this, they get it. I mean, Ashley's an assistant D3 coach, an assistant high school coach, and she has her own club program. Like, she gets progressive teaching and all that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, a positive for the game of basketball, because a lot of times we worry about everything that doesn't matter. Because we want, one of my big points of emphasis in how we do things is, are you here for accomplishment or acknowledgement? Anybody can acknowledge you, but you control in this platform in this weekend or whatever the event is, if you're going to accomplish anything. And my staff is very good at helping these kids get better, and that's their focus. So, I mean, I know I'm bragging on everybody else, but that's why I'm successful, is because I found people that love to teach the game. It's not just about showing love. We do that too. I mean, I've had to teach myself photography. Shout out to Glenn Nelson, who helped me start HoopGurlz way back in the day, before it was ESPN. It was just 2 of us, me finishing my degree at UW. And, we try to make sure we're acknowledging the kids as well and giving them that positive feedback to keep them in the gym. But it's got to be about the game. Right. At the end of the day, it's about basketball, not about attention.
Right. Yeah, it's totally interesting to see that side of it. Even more interesting now to start thinking about your story and how you got there. Talk about maybe freelancing a little bit, building that up to, you have all these accomplishments. I could go on and list, for the next 15 minutes of things you've done, things you're doing. But how did it all start? How did you get there?
I was coaching regular club basketball here in the area. I started out 6th grade boys was the first team I coached, and then I started coaching girls basketball, and the doors just kept opening to stay in that place. And I coached some pretty bad high school teams. I had a pretty good JV team at my alma mater, and then helped coach the C team there. And then I went over to Mariner High School, and I'll be damned, I went 0-16 with the freshman team there. It was a humbling experience. I will still say to this day it was the best coaching job I ever did. 0-16 with kids. Most of those kids had never played basketball before. You had to there's no ego involved there. You're getting smacked around every time. But I can vividly remember we played Mariners' rival still to this day because it's the district team's Kamiak, right? We went to Kamiak and lost 85-15. Humble pie, right? That's how that district's set up. Yep. My season, I started out with, I think I had 16 players on my roster. Wasn't allowed to cut anybody. It was a different experience, and there's some natural attrition that happened throughout the year, and we played them one of the last games of the season. So it was an early game and a late game, and we were tied going into the fourth quarter. I don't know, moral victory is the competitor in you says there's no such thing. But remember, 85-15 is a lot of I was
going to say progress.
Yeah.
Progress is a beautiful thing.
That's kind of where I got into girls basketball. And then we got started a feeder team for Mariner, and that turned into a team called Washington Triple Threat. A guy named Lee Smith started that program, and I got to coach with him and kind of learn the training business from him. And it kind of evolved, and that's where I met Glenn Nelson, as he brought this team called the Dragons, and he had a team from his community in Seattle. And I know you mentioned earlier about meeting Casey Kiyahara. Well, Casey played on one of his early teams and with Glenn's daughter. And so then I meet Glenn, and he takes over one of the teams, and they, eventually Triple Threat splits off. Glenn starts a new program team called HoopGurlz with the team that he kind of came and got with the Triple Threat group, and there was divide and conquer and whatever. And I just tried to stay out of the drama, but I met all these people. And so what people don't realize, what we had so good with Glenn Nelson was he was the editor-in-chief at scout.com, rivals.com, the original football recruiting online Bible, so to speak.
And this is what year would you say?
I met Glenn 02, 03.
Okay.
Well, I'm limping through my education at the University of Washington. I'm working my full-time job. I'm coaching when I can and trying to grab a class or two. And meanwhile, commuting from Lake Stevens to Seattle campus to wherever the heck we're practicing. And anyway, a long story, really long, right? So Glenn and I stayed friends even after the program kind of splintered. And I called him one day. I said, man, I love what you do. I'm into, basketball and following the sport. I've really gotten into, I really like coaching girls and being around the sport. I said, what do you think about, what you're doing here regionally? Because HoopGurlz became it was a website, and it had he was covering it a little bit while his daughter was still playing. And he's like, listen, man, if we're going to do an independent study or some sort of internship, you're going to work. You're not going to just, I know what you're going to school for journalism. You know how to write. I'm going to push you. And that's where HoopGurlz started in 2004. We started it as a project. He had tried to get some other people that were in the space to do what his idea was, because he was still trying to make sure that the men's basketball and the football recruiting on Scout was on point. And so we just did it. And I want to tell you, 05, 06, it was quasi-regional. We're trying to figure out how to raise some money to go to these different websites or these events so we can put it on the website. And then 06 happens, and the top Actually, I just ran into Jackie Jamal. She was the number 2 player the first year we put out a real national rankings. I saw her at Ashley Corral's wedding, and I was talking to her stories, how we used to argue about her, Tina Charles, who's in the W as well, played at UConn. And that's how long I've been around, I guess, now that they're all retiring from the league. But so it kind of took off, and we went from just this little site that tried to have a reason to, back then, message boards replaced social media. Our message boards were electric, with a lot of complaints, a lot of bickering about rankings, this, that, and the other, all the stuff that happens on Twitter and Instagram now. But it blew up. We were getting over 2 million page views a month, and we were the source digitally for recruiting news. And then we sold HoopGurlz.com to ESPN in 2008, I think. And so we went to work for ESPN for 5 years.
Was that just a totally exciting process, or were you nervous? Like, all right, we're about to give up control kind of deal? Yeah.
And, in retrospect now, the thing that we didn't think to do was have a buyback clause. But I'm still very, very grateful for being on that platform. I still talk to the last editor we had there. She was great to us. And, it kind of gave me some perspective. Having not, before I did this, I worked in residential and commercial real estate lending at Banner Bank, and never really had the entrepreneurial itch. And I had a choice at the end of ESPN when it was clear that, and they didn't just cut girls basketball, they cut Dave Tellep, who was the guy in men's basketball. He ended up taking a job with the Spurs, and they really scaled everything back. And you can see their coverage now. They still do a good job in the space, but it's not where we were going 04, 05, 06, up through 2010. It was very, very different. And I left in 2012, and we started ProspectsNation.com with a guy named Brandon Clay, who runs Peach State basketball. He was working for me at ESPN. He was one of our contractors covering different parts of the country, and he had his own event business, and it kind of opened my eyes to maybe where I needed to go. And that's, if you talked to me back then, I had no designs on having the camp series or running tournaments. I just wanted to cover the game. And really out of necessity, I got to have some fun. I started with a camp. I love coaching. I'm still a coach at heart, and it allowed me to scratch that itch. And we were, the very first camp I did, it was 20 kids with me and a guy named Sean Smith. His wife's a head coach, D3 head coach out in Mayne, and he's been a Division I assistant for several years, and they just had babies, so he's taken a couple of years off coaching. But it was him and myself and 20 kids in the Northgate Rec Center. And wow. It turns out one of the youngest kids at camp, his name's Aislinn Koenig. She's going to be a senior at NC State. She's going to be one of the best players in the ACC this year. And the next best kid was Kaylee Best, who played at Seattle U. And then it was just a bunch of random kid. I don't know who was going to show up. There was no, I didn't have a McDonald's All-American vote at the time, I don't think. Oh yeah, I guess I did. But I wasn't promoting it and trying to be that guy in that space. I just wanted to run basketball camp. And kind of took off from there. We had, I think we had 100 kids at Snohomish High School the second year. Mind you, we're only doing Seattle at this point. And then, we started, some of the kids that came from out of state to Seattle said, oh, you should do this here and do this there. The Oberg family was begging us to come to Minnesota. And now Minnesota is one of our, our biggest camps of the year. And we get to get a different cross section of kids. And now we're in Texas, and, we've done camps in California. I'm trying to add Arizona and Boston next year. I think to just people get hit up a lot for showcases. And I think once they come and see that it's not necessarily just about you playing pickup, that we're going to invest in you getting better, they tend to come back. And like I said, you've heard me brag about my staff. So as long as they're rocking with me, we're going to keep trying to grow it. But yeah, it literally went from me just covering, I used to write for a tiny little newspaper called the Mukilteo Beacon, when I was going through college, just covering the high school sports scene, and to take it off from there to what we're doing now is pretty cool when I look back at where it started. Yeah,
it's a long journey. I'm sure it's a very, very long journey, but to be where you're at now, really impressive. And I think even just to touch on while you mentioned your camps and what your staff brings, the thing that you brought that I thought was just really helpful was just an honesty about the system to the kids, about how this is all going to go. Just insight that they would never get anywhere else. You know, their parents can't give them that, unfortunately, unless they played the game. And even then,
or you have an older sister, right? That's what I try to tell people. Most of you haven't had the luxury. Even if you have an older sister, she might not have been good at basketball. And basketball recruiting, volleyball recruiting, softball recruiting, they're different beasts.
And from your vantage point, it's different too, from what you know and what you see to what, you know, what the player is. And just little advice like that. It doesn't have to be necessarily about that, but just little advice that can help them, you know, like you say, you're investing in them.
And just how to navigate the system when you can't. College coaches, no disrespect, but they're salesmen first. I think, I don't know if you heard I do a segment at most of the camps called Recruiting Red Flags. And part of it is red flags on things that college coaches try to hide. You know, they're trying to grow their program. They're not perfect. Red flags that they as parents and kids put out too. But I try to give them a few indicators so that they don't catch themselves in a situation where they just didn't know. Unfortunately, you're talking about kids who at 16, 17 years old are trying to understand how they're going to feel at 20 years old and what's going to make them happy, right? And I was just at the University of Washington practice today, and, you know, seeing some players I've been around for a while, and I think back to talking to them when they were going through the process and all the things that they thought mattered versus what makes them happy now. It's very, very different. But I mean, I try to give some advice and give some indicators, but it's ultimately their journey.
Right. Something I think they'll look back on later in life and appreciate, whenever that is. Is there a time when you start doing your camps where you were like, all right, this could be my thing? Was it that first camp where you really knew?
It was year two. And mind you, I didn't have the staff that I do now. And not that the staff that I had I told you about Sean Smith. I had him back in year two. He wasn't a college coach yet. He ended up going to the University of Maine and St. Francis, Brooklyn, and Rider College. He worked a bunch of places in the Northeast where he's from. But the kids that showed up that just had a great time. I mean, they almost all our top kids were major. Like Jordan Canada's in the pros now. She got in a van and drove up from LA, and she wasn't even sure if she was going to be able to play. She ended up not even being able to play because she had an ankle injury at the time. And every time I see her now, like, she just remembers, like, she's going to come give me a hug. Like, I wasn't her club coach or high school coach. I didn't have any major impact on her decision-making process or anything like that, but clearly we did something right that still meant something to her. We had, that's where we met Destiny Slocum, who's going to be one of the best players in the Pac-12 again this year. She was an 8th grader trying to compete in that space. I'm like, okay, this is what it is. If you can get really good kids together, people want to compete in that space. And like, okay, we've done it here. We can change some things, but man, this works. And I'd seen it. Like Brandon Clay, what I mentioned before, he did a thing called the Elite Basketball Academy, which is the camp out of Atlanta. And I saw him do it there, but the kids are different there, right? Every region I've learned of the country, they're a little different in what they come for, how they approach it, just things like that. But man, the West Coast, it was just, everyone was super excited and still super competitive. Michaela Cowling, who was a star at Cal, was throwing people shots across the gym who'd never been blocked before. It was just a really good group. Rasay Caldwell, because she came up and had a really good experience. She's working at the University of Texas now. Went to UCLA originally, finished up at Texas Tech, and she could be getting paid. She got offered contracts overseas. She could be getting paid right now, but because she had such a good experience that the next year we had a whole group of kids up from Texas that wanted to be a part of it. And then the following year, 2015, I mean, Sedona Prince was here, Lexi Gordon was here, Nia Green, who's was one of the top rated. She's at Louisville right now, about to start her college career, and she got to go heads up with Sabrina Ionescu, who's probably going number 1 in the draft this year. And Kelsey Plum, who went number 1 in the draft a few years ago, was a friggin' coach at that camp. And you just see the pieces kind of come together. Like this is the recipe. Don't make it about you. Just keep doing what this is. And that's kind of like, it just dawned on me, like, I'm pretty good at putting this together. Mm-hmm. So maybe this can be a big part of the thing I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how is scouting basketball talent different than scouting talent to like add to your team? Like when you're meeting a Mark Wilkerson or even Larry, the photography guy, or Hemi, all these different pieces.
So I will tell you, basketball, you're looking for a specific set of fixed metrics, so to speak. Can you shoot? Can you make plays? Do you have basketball IQ? Are you athletic? Are you long? The checklist is pretty consistent, but finding people, like I feel like my staff even has gotten better since we started working together. I feel like I've gotten better. I've seen Ashley grow from never being in front of a group of 100 kids to she could do 100 kids on her own, as long as you had somebody at a basket making sure people were doing, so I feel like maybe you didn't mean to ask, like the quality of the character and the work ethic is the same. You got to find that. I think it's hard with basketball because of the way the system is set up, where they have limited viewing. You don't know if they're just playing hard because college coaches are there, stuff like that, where, man, I told you what I was going to pay you. You showed up. If you're not motivated to be there, like, you're going to show me. Like, we haven't had much turnover in the staff category. I mean, we've had one that's moved on to doing her big girl job, being an adult. Mercedes Wetmore, she was with me at the beginning and one of my trainers, and she's a heck of an evaluator, but she didn't want to do she wants to build houses for a living. So go ahead and do your thing. So I haven't had to go scout for talent the way coaches do for players, but and then once you got it, I feel it's more like a pro contract. As long as I'm good to my people, they keep coming back, and they haven't left me yet. So Thank goodness.
Thinking back on your career and all these people that you've seen come through the camp, has there been a person that's turned it around from, maybe it doesn't have to be one camp, from the time you saw them to the time they went on their way, or maybe they're still in progress?
Like that they were better than I thought, kind of thing?
Yeah, or they've progressed more than you thought maybe they would. Or...
I will tell you right now, I just posted a story about Cal just got a bunch of commits in a row. Cal Berkeley did. And they all, like, it just hit all in a row. One of them is a kid out of Texas named Fatu Sam. And she'd come to the camp early in her career. I've seen her play high school basketball. She's a 6'5" post, and we all know posts developed late, and I liked her early, and you give them credit for some development that hasn't happened yet, and you just hope that they do that. And then I kind of came off of last summer thinking, man, was I wrong? And then she came back this summer, and she didn't even come to camp this year. She came last year, but I saw her play in the summer, and I was like, holy cow, did I get that wrong? She's really freaking good, and I'm okay with it. I like it when the kids prove me wrong, even if I give them some feedback. I remember giving Chiney Agwumike, who played at Stanford, had a chance to be a pro. She's a personality, an analyst on TV, and I think she's a rep for Adidas, and is doing a lot of good things. I still remember giving her crap as a sophomore in high school that she never used her left hand. And I saw her, I think it was her senior year of high school, at the state tournament, and it was still back at the same arena that UT plays in at the Irwin Center. Now they've moved it on, but she was making she made 2 left-hand layups in a row, and I'm sitting on the baseline taking pictures, and she smiled at me and said, "You see that left, Mr. Chris?" So, like, anytime they can stick it to me on what it is I think they need to do better, I really enjoy it, because I feel like that's what the coach in me is doing. You're not really being critical. You're trying to nudge them in those different areas. And that part's fun. But I will tell you, Fatu definitely in the recent memory is one of the most, she's either the most improved or I was just dead wrong, which I'm fine with. I can't be right. There's 2,000 kids a year that are, out, you're trying to get a beat on. There's no way any of us. That's why I appreciate the team I work with, because you're only as good as your resources. When Glenn and I started, it was just the two of us. There were a lot of 3 a.m.s at the Waffle House in some town. We didn't even know where we were at, trying to figure it out. So having a group of people to work with, they're all hoop heads. It's made me better, because you're only as good as your team, right?
Right. You have range in your staff, but I think you also have range yourself in basketball. These are the last couple questions. We'll get you out of here, but the range, from being a reporter to coach to, running these camps, just what overall have you learned, and what do you think that does for you, having all of that experience? And
I think having worn all the hats, like I appreciate what everybody does in their space. There's that, that phrase, stay in your lane, right? I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of lanes, and in some ways I've carved my own lane out. I just think it connects with basketball. Like that's why I loved your first podcast with Alvin Snow, and he was talking about all the different roles he had played in different leagues and different situations. And I feel like, while obviously I've never been that good of a basketball player to experience basketball in that manner, my professional life has been that. Man, you need me to take photos today? I go work other people's camps, and what do you need? You need me to take photos? Grab them, I'll dust off the Nikon, and let's go get it in. You need me to evaluate? I mean, I've done that for a long time now. You want me to get on the floor? I got enough tricks up my sleeve still. So I feel like that I've been successful because I'm able to do those things. And I think if I had only been one thing, I wouldn't have an appreciation for that. And then watching basketball and watching the really successful teams, the teams that are willing to figure out, and your role changes night to night. And I'll tell you, event to event, my role changes. There's some events where I'm involved in scheduling, or there's some events where I'm just there to evaluate. Sometimes people just want as much social media nonsense as possible. I get it, because I have to do it for my own business. So I get it. So I feel like the ultimate utility player, but you need me to score 20 tonight, just tell me where that is. I'll go get you your 20.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. It's what I've learned throughout this episode, and I think I learned in San Francisco too, is it's your lack of ego plays a huge part in probably your success, but what I liked about your event and what I liked about just spending time with you. So
thank you.
What makes you proud at the end of the day? Why do you put the work in? Obviously this is your job and you get paid, but
I sent an email. I screenshot an email I got after the Minnesota camp to my whole staff. And I won't mention the kid's name. Her parents were just really, really appreciative, because I went out of my way to acknowledge this kid's leadership and toughness. And she wasn't one of the best players at camp. She wasn't going to stand out with her James Harden double step back, whatever. But the kid really wanted to be there, really wanted to be in that environment, maximized it. And some kids weren't reacting to her. And so I made sure I told her, listen, you lead from the front. Don't worry if people don't want to follow. Like, you're going to have people follow you that want. In that moment, like I just given some advice, and I didn't realize that kid is bullied back at home because she's competitive. That's construed with preteens and teenage girls as being socially awkward. Mm-hmm. And so that had a huge impact. And both of her parents were varsity high school level coaches that know how to coach sport. So at what point someone with those credentials said their daughter took away that moment, that means I'm having an impact on kids beyond just the Destiny Slocums and Sabrina Ionescu's who have been to camp, and I've given them something too. Mm-hmm. But it's just different when you can find a way to have an impact on all these kids and make their experience really great. And that's what sport's supposed to be, right? We get caught up in scholarships and All-American awards, and great, I vote for McDonald's. Like, I get to vote for 25 kids. I need to impact more than 25 kids in what I do, or I'm failing at it. So I'm proud that we have that level of impact on these kids. And I'm not the only one that gets emails like that. I know my staff gets DMs or emails or texts from these different kids that they've had an impact on. So I'm proud that we really care about pushing those kids for more than just the 9 hours we're in the gym.
Yeah. It was genuinely cool to see. I had a great time watching
you coming out. That was fun.
No, thank you for the invite and all that you did. And but just seeing the impact you made on the kids, because I think you can see that in their faces and their actions and everything. And that's not just gonna, that impact's gonna hit them later too. It's not just that day. So
why does Kiana come back and coach at camp? Some kids I have to go reach out, right? Kiana Williams is going to be maybe the best point guard in the Pac-12 this year. She doesn't need me for anything. I'm not going to help her get drafted. None of that's going to happen. But she had such a good experience. She knew when camp was. She was on Twitter making sure she knew she doesn't want to miss it. So like that's a win. Like what else can you ask for? Like I can't.
Says it all. Says it all.
Sure.
And final question: if there's anything overall that you'd like to say to the Seattle basketball community, I'll give you the floor, Mr. Chris Hansen.
like, thank you. Like, this thing started with 20 kids at the Northgate Rec Center. And now I feel like Seattle basketball on the girls' side has a voice. And it's not because I'm speaking. It's because year in and year out since 2013, so many kids have come to the gym in August and been a part of what we're doing. And now, you know, we've got an online store now where people are buying the gear and just like they feel a part of our family. And that started here in Seattle. You know, I went to Bothell High School. I'm from right here. I've lived right around the corner from where you're at here in the U District. Like, I just feel like the basketball, I'm glad that it started here and that I'm from here, because this area initially didn't have a voice. And we've got a Tree of Hope is a Nike YBL team. The Northwest Blazers is an Under Armour team. Like, women's basketball has a voice here, and I'm glad to be one of the loudest ones. And it's because they continue to support what we're doing. So thank you first and foremost. And, you know, we're back. We'll be at training camp in March in Tacoma like we always do. And it's always packed out. And then we'll be back again in August. Every August I live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but I'm always coming home. So we'll see you this summer.
He's a jet setting.
Shoot.
And if the people want more, if they don't already know, where can they find you?
EliteIsEarned.com. All of our content's there. The college coaches subscribe there. All of our events are there. We've got some cool things coming. This year. A lot of good growth, and I'm excited. We got some new cities coming that I know. I just talked to Coach Wilkerson. He's excited. You know how he gets.
Oh man, there's nobody like Coach Wilkerson.
He's original.
But Chris Hansen, I appreciate you. And if the people can't see from this, just what I said earlier, I really meant. And it's just nice to see all these different people from all these different places have this same ideal and this same lack of ego and just drive to pull other people up and not bask in their own glory or care about anything of that. So just again, thank you. And I appreciated talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man.